In our short discussion here, Michelle, you said that a conflict with Iran could last anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Incredibly long time.
To take out the nuclear hardware takes out about 6 to 8 weeks. You can't go over and just take it out in an afternoon.
Well,
you've got to take out the air defense systems. It's
right.
a whole process.
If we go back to 1981-82, when Israel took out the Iraqi reactor, that was done in an afternoon.
It was a completely different facility and a mission. And now your listeners need to recognize is there are multiple nuclear stations.
Exactly. They're all across the country of Iran.
And that's what we know about.
And that's what we know about. Some of these are underground. Some of these would require bunker-busting bombs. I have been under the impression that Israel is going to have to do something eventually, and I've said it 100 times, the Jews ignored the warnings of the 1930s, and we all know what happened. They cannot ignore the warnings of this generation.
But President Obama has undercut
Israel
at every turn, because one thing I noticed being on the Intelligence Committee, that President Obama and his team were leaking out information that would hurt Israel. Like saying, for instance, we know that Israel is going to bomb Iran in the next 2 to 4 months. Who would say that? Or we know that Israel has a secret agreement with Saudi Arabia to have airbase rights in Azerbaijan. Who would say that? Or that we know that there's a secret computer virus that Israel's been working on. Who would say that? That all came out of President Obama's National Security Council. And it was to send a signal to Israel. Don't you dare try anything, because we will know what's going on, and we will inform Iran. And it told Iran, hey, buddies, we're on your side. We're not on Israel's side.
Well, then he also threatened to shoot down Israeli planes if they try to make a strike against Iran. It may be, Michelle, that this is going to play out in the Gog-Magog war of Ezekiel 38-39. I don't know that. I'm just wondering, when else is this scenario going to properly be addressed? At that time, the Bible says that the hordes that are coming against Israel, that God will wipe them out, and I'm beginning to think that that's the only time that it's going to be possible for some of the, be it ISIS, be it the Iranians, that God is going to have to take some of these forces out, because they all want to come against Israel. Israel is surrounded. She's got Hezbollah, she's got Hamas, she's got ISIS. My gosh, she's got all around her, she's got these enemies, and I believe that it's coming to a point where only God can deal with them properly.
Well, only God can. But also the believing church needs to do our part.
Yes.
And that's why I say we need to turn our whole heart toward God. We need to realize how close this clock is to getting toward the midnight hour. And I think that's why, for our sake, for the sake of our family, for our nation, for the next generations, we need to cry out to a holy God. This is coming faster than anyone can see. I know I worked very hard on the Intelligence Committee to try and keep up with what was happening in the world. It got to such a crescendo, I could hardly keep up with it anymore. The events have picked up such a pace, and they're going to continue. It's just like the Bible forewarned, that in the last days, it will be like the beginning of birth pangs. In my opinion, we are far beyond the beginning of birth pangs. We're moving far down into the process. For women who are listening to this show today, you know what I'm talking about, what it's like to deliver a baby at the very beginning stage and then at the very end before the baby is born. All I can tell you as a mom who has given birth to 5 babies, the birth pangs are very close together. They're very intense now. And we are literally watching month by month the speed move up to a level we've never seen before with these events. Barack Obama is intent. It is his number one goal to ensure that Iran has a nuclear weapon. Why? Why would you put the nuclear weapon in the hands of madmen who are Islamic radicals who believe it's their religious duty to bomb Israel and to bomb the United States? That is where we're headed right now. And that's why the best thing that we can do is have churches and pastors explain our times. Believers need to get our lives right with God And then we intercede. We intercede and intercede. And then not despair, but rejoice that we get to be living in the most exciting time in history. Prophets said we look to the future. We long to see those days and live in those days. Why? Because it's the return of a soon and coming King. Jesus Christ is coming back. We, in our lifetimes, potentially could see Jesus Christ returning to earth, the rapture of the church. This is one of the most exciting times in history. We need to be exactly watching the tenor of the times, be observing, and look up. Our redemption draweth nigh. These are wonderful times, but we see the destruction, but this is the destruction that was foretold.
Again, folks, come on out October 2nd, 3rd this fall at Grace Church, Eden Prairie, a suburb of Minneapolis. We're going to be talking about these kinds of issues along with Michelle Bachmann, Dr. Robert Jeffress, Pastor Jack Hibbs from Calvary Chapel, California, and Amir Sarfati, who is an Israeli. Michelle, you were at the southern border in August, and you said to me that we are becoming a nation with a third world mentality because so many third worlders are walking across our borders. Maybe the future president will seal the border, but until then, that's not going to happen.
For the next 22 months, we are going to have a completely open, penetrable border. And people today, as you and I are talking, literally thousands are pouring over. The United States is the most generous country in the world when it comes to immigration. We allow 1 million people to come into the United States per year legally. If you added up every other country and the number that they allow through immigration, we exceed every country of the world combined with legal immigration. We have no need to let more people in. And yet, the estimate from Border Patrol is that an additional 2 million people come into the United States illegally. That's 3 million people a year on our social support systems. And it is breaking the bank. But worse than that, we have no ability to be able to vet people who are coming in. This is hurting the American worker. It is hurting the American jobs. It is lowering wages and lowering benefits for the American people. Our government needs to be about being for the American worker, not hurting the American worker. Hurting